All right, welcome to episode 5 of Spiritually Kinky. I am your host, Dustin, and today, we have such a juicy topic. I love this episode. Today's episode is called The Sacred Art of Touch, Sensuality, Safety, and Surrender. And isn't it nice that we built on last week's deep dive of how to build trust in a disconnected world? Because here's the thing, here's what a lot of people are experiencing that you give the hugs, you hold the space, you rub the backs, but deep down, you crave touch that feels good. You crave touch that feels safe and reverent, soulful. And if you're not lying to yourself, maybe even a little wild, maybe even a little naughty. I know that I do. But what happens when we allow ourselves to be touched mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and yes, physically, with consensual intention? So I'm loving that we're going to dive deep into this and that we're going to split the center of this baby wide open, because last week when we talked about trust, here's what we need to understand is that submission and surrender are not the same thing, right? Submission is by force, control, and surrender is built on trust. If you surrender to life, if you surrender to the person that you love, if you surrender to yourself, right? That takes building trust. And so in this first segment, we're going to talk about trusting the power of touch, and that touch is not just physical, it's energetic. It speaks to your nervous system, your soul, and your subconscious. And remember, babe, there is nothing wrong with you. You do not need healing. You don't need to be fixed. You don't need to be solved. You're not broken. This is just your remembering. So here's the thing, and here's the truth is that, many of us are better at giving than receiving because we're walking in the way of our not it identity. We're walking in the way of our wounds. We're creating from the place of I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. We're creating from our pain. And why do we do this? Well, it's because we've never learned what safe, sacred, connected touch feels like. So whether it's massage, energy work, and let me tell you, I do Reiki, I do massage, right? Whether it's massage, energy work, a conscious embrace, all of it can awaken what's been dormant if we're willing to surrender. So this is how we move from wounded to whole, from healing to creating. We have to reclaim our yes and our no. And I don't just want to even say many women are walking around, not claiming their yes and their no. Many people are walking around not claiming their yes and their no. And they're giving them away like they're valueless, and then not showing up and not following through. So they haven't really claimed their yes and their no yet. And a lot of women are walking around in wounded masculine energy. And that usually shows up as controlling, overgiving, disconnected from desire. And many men are stuck in the wounded masculine too, where they're not claiming their masculine. And so it's resulting in untrustworthy, avoidant, bouncing from one thing to the next. Can anybody that's been in the dating world in the last 5 to 7 years speak to that? Yeah. Right? And so it's really apparent. So what is the bridge back to real intimacy? Trust, baby. And it starts with owning your yes and honoring your no. That's where it starts. So you have to make the commitment in your life that what you say yes to, you say fuck yes to. What you say no to, you say fuck no to, right? And you don't have to say it like that. But you need to stand your ground with your yes and your no. This is all about consent, right? This is all about permission. And so you have to use your yes and your no first. And that's why these practices all start with self, because you can't show up and ask somebody to do something for you and just not show up in that value, right? Like it's just, but it's the way that a lot of us work. It's a way that a lot of us work. We're trying to control everything on the outside, trying to fix, solve, heal, all of it, and the truth is that we're just disconnected from who we really are, and we haven't really embodied that in ourselves. But touch is such a beautiful way to get there. So what would it be like to be touched by somebody you trust with your pleasure and your pain? What does that sacred surrender mean to you? And I want to tell you a little story, because this was such a magical moment in my life that I knew that there were good men out there. And unfortunately, this man has passed away. He passed away, I believe, about 5 or 6 years ago. But it was a time when I was in my 20s, and I was very much into my wounds. I was very much into I can do it myself, and fuck you if you want to try and help me. I don't need your help. I don't need anybody. And a lot of the people in my life said it was pretty hard to be my friend, because I just was so guarded and protected and just walking around in wounds. And so is everybody else. But, um, one of the relationships that I got in, I hit this. I've had a lot of abandonment in my life. I've had a lot of rejection in my life, and a lot of people have left my life from a very early age. And they came in, became family, and then they were just gone. And that happened a lot, so many times in my life. Um, and so what I would do is, when I thought somebody was going to walk away from me, or if I felt like they were getting to walk away from me, and that was that point where they were going to walk away and they weren't coming back, I would like push them away. I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but I would just get really angry and I'd push them away, and I'd be like, fine, I fucking don't need you anyway. Go, go, go. And I was very adamant about it. And like, let me just say, it would have taken a strong man to stay with where I was. But the truth is that I was just projecting, and it was just a protection. Um, and so this man, he left, and I just fell apart. I just sat down on this chair, and I just fell apart, and I just started sobbing, because having him leave was the last thing that I wanted. But I was too afraid to ask him to stay. And I was too afraid that he was going to leave me anyway, and all that stuff. And as I was crying, I remember sitting there, and I had my head down, and I've got my hands over my eyes, and I'm just sobbing and falling apart. And I remember he grabbed my hands, and I opened my eyes and I look at him, and he came back. And I had a lot of great times with him. I had a lot of great times with him. Unfortunately, at the time when he wanted something more of me, he was actually probably a decent person in my life that would have probably made me very happy, but I was not ready to receive him. Um, and it just didn't work out. And, that's okay. And I just want to honor his memory, just because, he isn't here anymore. But I got to tell him that before he passed away, that like meant the world to me. And it doesn't seem like that should be a very big deal, but it was a huge deal. Because I had a lot of, I have a lot of protection. I had a lot of protection. I grew up, I had to be. And I know that there is a lot of people that call themselves sensitives and empathic and all of that. And let me just tell you, like, if you have to be that aware when you're little, because it is actually a survival mechanism, right? Like, you have to learn how to stay alive. You need to be able to read people's moods. You need to be able to read the energy, and all of that. And I, unfortunately, there was a lot of stuff that I grew up in when I was young. It was a very unsafe environment. I had a lot of near-death experiences. I had a lot of abuse experiences. I had a lot of just, um, just like stuff that kids shouldn't go through, like they just shouldn't go through. It's just a lot. And so, there's been a lot of those contracts that have been passed down in my family. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because to me, that moment was our bridge back to intimacy, right? That was something that, with his actions, he showed me he was going to be there because he came back. He didn't leave me. And is angry and is mad and is just, as I was at him, pushing him out the door, telling him to leave, that I didn't need him or anything like that. He came back. And so that moment when he saw me and he saw what I was trying to protect, and the fear and the being scared and all of that, when he saw me, like that to me was also like a surrender for me. It was allowing somebody to see me vulnerable. Like, oh my God, I mean, if you knew me, it would make a lot of sense, but maybe you do know me. Maybe it does make a lot of sense, but he held me in my pain, and he definitely held me in my pleasure. He was the first person, I would say, that I really, 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 really experienced some just exquisite pleasure with. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. And, that sensuality and that sexuality and that, sacred submission, sacred surrender, it doesn't mean that you're powerless, right? It means powerful enough to surrender by choice, right? And so as we dive deeper into this, we need to understand that we can create new definitions of sensuality and sexuality, and understand that, this communication begins with consent, right? This communication begins with consent. And we have to allow ourselves and give ourselves permission to receive what it is that we want. And it sounds so silly that we have to learn how to do this, right? But we've grown up in a lot of suffering. We've grown up in a lot of the problem structure, and there's just so many people that are walking around that are just not willing to receive. They're not willing to receive. They don't know how to receive, and all that, just because we haven't gotten the conscious education yet. So, I love this line, and I'm going to give you this line, and this came from just one of the most sauciest, as we're going to talk about massage, one of the sauciest audios. That I started listening to as I started building Spiritually Kinky. And I just got so many beautiful nuggets from these audio scripts, because there are some lines in these audio scripts that literally unravel me. And if you know, I did not realize I was such an audio queen, but I really am. And that's kind of where we're going to go over. If you want to know what audio clip it was, we're doing a little sideshow called I Don't Need a Book Boyfriend, I Need an Audio King. And I will introduce this audio, where the came from and what audio clip it was. So stay tuned for that. But the consent and the permission is I give you permission to use your touch physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to enhance my pleasure and decrease my pain. Now, this is such a powerful line, especially when you're talking with somebody else, but it's very, very important that you give yourself permission to use your touch, right? Your energy, your creative force to physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually touch yourself, right? Devote touch to yourself to enhance my pleasure and decrease my pain. You got to give yourself consent and permission because that is sacred. And when you start noticing that in the problem structure for a long time, you have not been using your touch mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually to enhance your pleasure and decrease your pain. Instead, it has been to keep you safe and alive, which is causing a lot of pain and suffering, but it's comfortable. So that's what that is. So we have to know that this is a practice, right? And trusting yourself, in feeling safe in your skin, and redefining pleasure as something that heals and not harms. And this was a big one for me. This was a big one for me. And because I am so sensitive, because I do play so deep energetically, I feel things very deeply. And most people are not walking around aware of how they are touching themselves or how they are touching the world. And it's very reactionary and no judge. It's just the structure that we're creating in. It's just our evolution as humanity and from the not in identity. But that's why this is so needed. And that's why I'm doing whatever it takes to bring this conscious education to you guys because I think it's really important. Because intention matters. Intention matters. And if you're not intentionally choosing, you are unintentionally choosing, but you're choosing either way, babe. So you are the primary creator in my life and you get to choose. So sacred touch doesn't start with someone else. It starts with you. And it's a practice to teach yourself how to trust yourself to receive what you desire. Because your unconscious is what will allow you or deny you to have what you really want. And that's why this is so important. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I get into another saucy episode in episode 6. Let me just tell you what it is. It is touched by the divine, awakening the king and queen through massage, music, and meditation. And if you know me, massage, music, and meditation is my vibe. It's what I wholeheartedly create a life I love from massage, music, and meditation, and all of the beautiful, wonderful things that come in between all of those things. But that is for sure a life that I love. And creating a partnership of somebody that I can enjoy that massage, music, and meditation with for sure. So that's going to be a really good episode. If you guys haven't checked out the other episodes yet, make sure you check out from the very beginning, the origin story, the setup, all the way through 4, which we had, which was all about building trust in a disconnected world. And I just really appreciate each and every one of you. You guys get to see the raw, you get to see the real. If you're not watching and you're listening, then you get to hear it. We are leveling up into a podcast studio, a TV studio, possibly a newsroom studio, which we'll have access to. And I'm just really excited to be able to bring this to you and be able to bring the people that I've got lined up as podcast guests to you as well. So stay tuned. We've got a lot of amazing conversations ahead, and we've also got some naughty ones. So if you do want to check out that audio, make sure you check out I Do Not Need a Book Boyfriend. I Need an Audio King, where we're going to discuss different spicy audio clips that whoever is brave enough and wants to join us on on the Zoom, we're all going to listen to the same one, and then we're going to come back and talk about it and see what we liked about it, see what we didn't like about it. But it's going to take some brave souls. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And you guys, I will see you on the next episode. Thanks.